So the winning run is over. United win 3 in a row, but draw at Nottingham Forest, salvaged a point, you could say. 2 points dropped, you could also say. Unlucky not to win with Ahmad's shot cleared off the line in the dying embers of the game. You could say that United, any result could have come out of that game and you maybe wouldn't have been surprised at it. But, I think for me watching it, I was brought back down to earth a little bit, but you do kind of expect that these games are going to happen. These games are going to happen because we know throughout all the last 3 games and throughout all the positives over the last few weeks that this is a squad that isn't finished or anywhere near finished. And I think we saw some issues in the game, which are problems that have just come back to the surface that we knew were already there. And it's unfortunate, really. But I think the main point and the main takeaway that I want to talk about on this episode of the podcast is that United probably would have lost that game last season. And they did show character to get back into the match. Even if, for me, I don't actually think that United deserved to win. I think they were rather fortunate even to take a point from that. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. And we need to just take lessons, move on. Well, the club needs to take lessons, move on, look forward, because Tottenham next week it's a tough game on paper, but the way Tottenham played against Chelsea last night, I'm going to really, I think, learn a lot about the development of this United squad and their character and the way that they're playing and their development in how they play that match against Tottenham, because Tottenham have been awful lately. But, the Forest game was always going to be more difficult than the table suggested. They're a team with a lot of real quality in there. Got a new manager, obviously. They've not had a great start to the season. They're on their 3rd manager already this season. But Sean Dyche is a savvy operator. And look, it was never going to be as simple as just going there, rolling up and getting 3 points. But, you hope that United would have taken the 3 points, but it wasn't to be. Let's just take the point, move on, and discuss on this episode of the Promised Land podcast what we learned out of that. There are some worries, there are some positives, and obviously through the never too high, never too low lens, which I will try and maintain, it is good to just take the positives and start to learn from the negatives. Hopefully United can eradicate those and get better throughout the weeks to come. They have a relatively kind fixture list through until the end of the year, really, with no real, outside of Tottenham, like big 6 opponents or whatever. So let's judge, as I say, let's judge United on progress over a long period of time. We're always going to get peaks and troughs. And look, it would have been nice to come away with 3 points there, but it wasn't to be. Anyway, this is the Promised Land podcast with me, Scott Saunders, chatting all about Manchester United. I'm recording this the day after the Forest game. I watched it in the TalkSport studio, and you're tearing your hair out at times. You really are. But overall, I think I'm okay-ish. I'm okay with the point. Let's just say I'm okay with the point. Subscribe to the pod on Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. All the links are in the description. Please follow me on social media at @_Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Get your comments in through social media or through the comment sections on the podcasts on Apple and Spotify. Like I say, 5-star reviews, much appreciated. Tell your friends if you would like to share the joy. Is this a podcast, Joe? I don't know. Share the podcast around with your mates. I would really, really appreciate it if you could do that, if they support United. And get in touch, like I say. But let's talk. Is it points dropped or is it 1 gained? Because Amorim said after the game that it was along the lines of 2 points dropped. And really coming into it, I think United were the favourites to win. Forest have been poor for most of the season. Obviously, Chelsea went there a few weeks ago and turned them over with relative ease, although that was under a manager that looked beleaguered. And Sean Dyche is probably not. You're not going to get the same joy against a Sean Dyche team, really. I think he's got in there. He's really got amongst the players, and he will make Forest, mid-table, I would say. They've had a difficult start to the season, but you'd imagine that they'll be a lot better. And it was unrealistic, really, to think that United would just go there and do what Chelsea did a few weeks ago. But points dropped or 1 gained? I'm personally seeing this as 1 gained, because the way that the game played out was, I like I say, I don't think United really deserved to win that. I think Forest were for the majority of the second half. Even though Ruben Amorim thought that the team were building momentum, I didn't really agree. The way that I watched it, I think what the issue was for me, it was relatively 50-50 up until United scored. And then we had that incident where the ball went out of play or it didn't go out of play. And Forest and their supporters really did not appreciate that at all. I think it spiced up the atmosphere. It really ticked off the players, ticked off the supporters as well. And United went and scored from the resulting corner. Now, to me, when I was watching it live, I thought it looked out. And well, everybody else is saying, well, it wasn't actually out, was it? And like, you know, and they're complaining about the official being really far away and like, how could he ever seen that? Well, also, what if it was out? They're only complaining about it really, and it's only a talking point because United went and scored from the resulting corner. Forest didn't defend the corner very well, did they? Now Casemiro got up, didn't really have to jump. He met the ball direct from Bruno Fernandes's corner and put it in. And Forest should have defended it better. That you're gonna get calls like that, which are on the periphery. You can't go and review VAR for every single thing. And for me, when I was watching it, I thought it was out personally. And you can see that they have to make snap decisions in those moments, and that's the way that it went. You're not going to be absolutely perfect there. And there were incidents in the second half as well. I remember where Benjamin Sesko had a shot which was deflected, which wasn't given as a corner. It was given as a goal kick. Forest then went down the other end and then had the exact opposite thing happen to them. They won a corner when it shouldn't have been a corner. Like, it was, maybe you could say the officiating wasn't brilliant, but for me, like, there's always a way, there's always a reason to talk about Manchester United in a negative light. They always need just any kind of opportunity to go and make a mountain out of a molehill. Look, Forest should have defended that corner a hell of a lot better than they did. And the big thing that media do nowadays, and like Forest have made a big deal of this as well, is go and complain about officiating decisions. But look, on another day, maybe they change the decision. Maybe it's different. For me, watching it live, I thought it was, and you can't be absolutely perfect all the time. But look, we'll probably get fallout for that over the course of the week. It's just the way that it is. United did what they should have done. They got on with it, scored from the corner, and like I was hoping at the time that because they got into the lead, that maybe they could have held on to it. But what happened for me was pretty much infuriated the entirety of the City ground. Nottingham Forest and their supporters were not happy with that at all. United went into half-time in the lead, but then obviously he had that moment in the second half with that 5-minute period where United just lost their heads completely, and Forest seemed pretty ticked off. I don't know whether Sean Dyche really lent into that injustice that they felt, and I felt like Forest, from the moment that United scored the first goal, really, I thought Forest were pretty much the better team. And Forest came out after half-time, up the intensity for me. They started peppering United's box with crosses, scored 2 goals out of them. You can look at United in the way that they defended and point fingers. You absolutely can. I think the fact that Ahmad's getting beaten at the back post for Morgan Gibbs-White is a risk that you've got to take, really. Maybe there's organizational issues that United could have dealt with there. I think Luke Shaw was not really marking anybody. Can Matthias de Ligt and I think Casemiro was in there. Can they maybe drop back a little bit to make sure that Ahmad gets that extra support? Can maybe Lenny Yoro funnel out there to maybe defend against Morgan Gibbs-White, given he's a centre-back and probably has a hell of a lot better an opportunity to clear it with his head than Ahmad did. It's a mismatch. If you're playing Ahmad in that role, you got to realize there's going to be risks like that, which are always a drawback, while you also acknowledge that at the other end, Ahmad can add lots and lots of things in the final third. And he obviously got the equalizer as well, which I will talk about on the pod. It's maybe United could have dealt with that better. The second goal, I think lots of fingers being pointed at Diogo Dalot for the fact that he didn't really react, and Savona gets in there. Yeah, well, I think we're all pretty common on looking at Diogo Dalot and thinking, I'm not entirely convinced by you. I've said that on the podcast a number of times as well. He doesn't really offer anything in an attacking outlet. He, in Ruben Amorim's own words, took up or didn't take up the opportunities to cross the ball because he was on his wrong side with his wrong foot, and was replaced by Patrick Dorgu. Let me say this: I think there's a lot of places in the team that needs upgrading, and I think Dorgu's been okay since he joined, but he's obviously a young lad, and you can't expect the world out of him straight away. I think the way that it's looking for me, the way that it's developing, not entirely convinced that Dorgu's going to give United everything that they want at left wing back straight away. It might take a few years. Maybe the quality that he ends up being is squad player who can play on both sides at wing back and offer that extra bit of depth. But while there's problems on the right wing side with the fact that Amad's getting beaten at the back post, I think left wing back is actually more of an issue for me week by week. And it'll be interesting to see what happens, as I said on the podcast over the last few weeks. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Lisandro Martinez gets back in and when he gets back playing football regularly. I would imagine he comes straight back into the team when he's fully fit. Maybe he's, bled into it a little bit. Maybe gets substitute appearances to build up his match fitness. But you would imagine that Ruben Amorim will look at him and think, you're my left centre-back option. And I think Luke Shaw over the last few weeks has been, for me, pretty impressive in that left centre-back role. I think he's grown into it a hell of a lot. But obviously, Lisandro Martinez is a natural centre-back and does offer as well that passing range and that ability to carry the ball, as he was doing before he got injured from that left centre-back role. So I think Martinez makes more sense of a fit there for me when he's back and when he's fit. And given that problem, I've spoken about Dalot there, Dorgu needs time as well. Luke Shaw, obviously, there are issues with his fitness, and that left wing back and the right wing back roles are both very demanding in terms of the physical aspect of it and getting up and down the pitch and doing both roles defensively and offensively as well. But Luke Shaw does have that ability to cross the ball. He does have, as we've seen when he's played at left wing back, I think he even prefers the position. He said that as well. I would like to see how he deals there. I'd like to see that change made moving forward, and maybe it doesn't work. It's obviously a risk, and United know a hell of a lot more than all of us do about Luke Shaw's capabilities and from a physical aspect. But I think Luke Shaw does offer you that, whether that's temporarily or as a maybe medium or longer term solution. He does offer that quality on the ball and that ability with the left foot, the ability to cross the ball. He does offer that, which Ruben Amorim was calling out as a big issue in that game yesterday. And Amorim is still picking Dalot. I've been very defensive of him, and I will remain so as well. But I personally don't see the appeal of playing Dalot all the time. I think I've mentioned him there about maybe switching off and Savona getting in there first. It doesn't really offer you that attacking outlet either. And at left wing back, it feels like he's just in the team because he's there and he's part of the leadership group and that kind of thing. I've been talking about Dalot for a little bit, and you know my thoughts on him. I'm sure that most people share those thoughts as well. I don't want to dig him out too much because at the same time, this is a work in progress, and he's been there for a while. I think he's respected within the club and is regarded as a senior leader in the team, and that's fine. And for me, though, Dalot shouldn't be on the team sheet every week. I think I'd be more okay with him being a rotation option or someone to bring in or someone to bring off the bench. But there's just no real outstanding attributes there. But for the second goal, maybe I've gone on about Dalot a bit too long there. The second goal was a bit of a comedy of errors from United defensively, and there were certainly lots of people to go and win that header, and everybody ended up getting in each other's way. And Matthias de Ligt, imperious in defense generally, really good in the air. I think he didn't really get an opportunity to clear it. And maybe that's because other players were getting in his way. I'd need to watch it back really to know who exactly could have been the one to deal with it. But Forest did it, and Forest benefited from it. The problem I think United had coming out of half-time was they were facing up to a really ticked off Forest, who, for me, really upped the intensity. I thought that the big difference was that Forest wanted it more in those moments and wanted to make a statement. They felt aggrieved, I think, and maybe I'm just imagining this, but United are going to have to learn to live with that upping in intensity, and they're going to have to go with it. I think maybe United were a little bit complacent at the start of the second half, and Forest benefited from it. And there will be moments like that. They switched off for a few minutes, and then the game was nearly, well, 3 points were taken away from them, but the game itself was nearly taken away from them as well. And it's a characteristic thing which Ruben Amorim's going to need to continue working on. It's going to come with time. But they lost the physical battle in those moments for me. And then throughout the second half, I think United were quite fortunate that some moments where I think there was a time in the game, really, maybe after United scored, where Forest were finding out the weaknesses in the United team. Now there were a lot of like direct balls through the channels. They were like Callum Hudson-Odoi was dropping into midfield and carrying the ball, and United couldn't deal with it. Dan and Doy on the other side as well. I'd picked up a space in behind the left wing back on occasion. Maybe there was sometimes he was called offside, but Forest had spotted the weaknesses in that United team and really exploited them. And I thought there was one particular moment at 2-1 where Hudson-Odoi picked up the ball, carried it forward. That midfield, we know, as much as I've been giving it praise for the last few weeks, we know that that's in there. If United aren't keeping up that intensity and aren't fully concentrated and aren't closing up those gaps, there are still opportunities for those opponents to go and exploit them. And I think Forest did that really well. Now, there are, for all of my defenses of the system and that kind of thing, there are still weaknesses and flaws in it. And United don't have, for me, the exact profile fits in that midfield area. And we know that they will go and look to sign midfielders in 2026. And that is just something we're going to have to wait for and be patient with. There are games, though, where United will have that, and they're going to have to learn to deal with it a lot better. But that's still a weak point for me at certain moments and certain points. But look, the important thing was that United did not get blasted out of the game. You know, I think last season, I've seen that game a few times. Watching that, I think United would have probably lost that 3-4-1. That's kind of what I think. But there are a number of positives to take out of this as well that you can take forward. And while the likes of Brian Mbeumo and Mateus Cunha didn't really fire, neither really Ahmad, even though maybe that's a little bit unfair on him because he was the guy that scored the equalizer. He had a few shots on goal. He had one cleared off the line in the 90th minute, but maybe we didn't see the best of him either. So I think United were nullified to a degree. But even while I say that, the attacking threat that United have, that they carry and that they possess, is so much greater than last season. It always gives you a chance of staying in matches. So yeah, for me, the big positive is that United came out of that game with a point. And there are signs of progress which you can take, even if you're not winning. And just adding an extra point to the board when maybe on another day you'd have probably lost that game, that to me is also progress. The fact that United went through that 5 minutes in the second half at the start of it and had the game essentially snatched out of their hands by Forest, who they came out, they were really up for it. They spotted a weakness and they completely exploited it with those 2 goals that they scored. But we've seen United in those moments before concede goals in clusters. And that's exactly what happened there. Generally, games get taken away from them when that happens. And what we saw, even though they rode their luck at times and Forest had opportunities, United also had opportunities of their own. Bruno Fernandes hit the post. Ahmad had that one cleared off the line late on, obviously. But it was really seesaw and quite topsy-turvy towards the end. And United, while I'm saying that Forest, I thought, were maybe the better team on the day, United had plenty of opportunity to score, and maybe on another day, United could have gone and salvaged the win, and we would have been lucky. But that would have, really picked up the confidence even more than had done so. I think United, if they'd have won yesterday, would have gone second in the league table, and they were second at a point in the day as well, which is absolutely wild. But they'll probably finish this weekend 8th or 9th in the league. But that's just the nature of how close the league is at the moment. If you win one game, you might jump up the league. If you lose it, you'll fall down the league. Or if you draw, you'll fall down the league as well, because there's other teams who are going to be beating other teams in that mix of about 10 that are all vying from anywhere from 12th place to second at the moment. That's just the way that the league is. But I think it's important that United came out of that moment in the game where they were really shook recalibrated and reestablished their position in the game, had chances of their own, and kept going. Now, I've raised concerns about the character of the squad numerous times, and so has Ruben Amorim. Is like all the time he seems to do that, and he came out pretty positive with the fact that he said, "Well, I think we'd have lost that game last season." My immediate thought, but even before watching his press conference in which he said we'd have lost that game last season, I tweeted that. I put it out at _ Scott Saunders. I said the positive is that United would have lost that game last season. For me, that in itself is progress, and the players can take a bit from that, learning how to live with those moments where you're under the cosh. They're not going to dominate games all the time. They're not going to, even teams like Forest, who were 18th going into this, give other teams a hell of a time, you know? And that's just the way that the Premier League is. What we need to get to is a point of consistency where United are embedding their style and like dominating matches throughout and consistently. But that's not going to, I'm not like, under no illusions. This is not going to happen for a long time. United have opportunities with the fact that they get more rest than all the other teams to give their best selves more. But that you will get games like that. You will get games like that. So it's never going to be an easy one for me, even though I was hoping going into the game that United could get the points there. I'm choosing to view this as, in terms of never too high, never too low, I'm choosing to view this as a positive in the fact that United did manage to get their way back into the game and salvage a point out of it. Now, Ahmad, who had a bit of an up and down game, I've got to say, but he was always a real threat, and he always is a real threat from that right wing back position. When he gets forward, it can work against United, but it can also work for them as well. He had opportunities, he had a few shots which Sells saved, but the quality that he showed, taking that ball on the volley and smashing it into the net, it is some kind of quality that that's the benefit of having more attacking players on the pitch, even in those wing-back roles. The technical quality that he showed to hit that so sweetly on the volley. Can you imagine any alternative? Can you imagine Mazraoui doing that? Can you imagine Dallo doing that? Can you imagine Patrick Dorgu doing that? You can't really. And Amorim knows, I think he knows that there's a risk that he's going to have to take with the problem of opposition players and opposition teams actually targeting Ahmad in a defensive sense to try and get some joy out of him. But it's a risky play, but United ended up benefiting from it in the end, even though you could say that maybe the balance came out even because Forest benefited from a goal which they peeled off the back of Ahmad for, and Ahmad was the one that got the equaliser as well. It is a big moment for him. I think we're going to have to be patient with this and make sure that look, we can all see the upsides of playing Ahmad there. It makes United a hell of a lot stronger in attacking force. And when you play fullbacks or wingbacks at wingback and not wingers, you can really see the difference in how blunt United are versus how much of an extra attacking threat that they have. You can really see that. And I'm glad that Amorim's persisting with him there. If anything, I've been surprised over the last few weeks that he's been as bold as actually choosing Ahmad in those positions in big matches as well, because, big teams could potentially exploit that. And there was a time where Amorim had not really wanted to feature Ahmad in that role and then instead gone for fullbacks like Dallo in those moments. But I think the understanding that Mbumo and Ahmad are creating and have together is certainly one of United's biggest attacking elements at the moment. And look, when they both go away for AFCON, United will need to find a temporary solution for that, which begs a hell of a lot of questions, and it's going to cause probably a lot of problems as well. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it in a couple of months' time. I'm certainly not going to spend too much time talking about it at the moment. But big attacking outlet, and credit to Ahmad for the way that he dispatched that, and incredibly unlucky in the end as well to have that ball cleared off the line. Did everything right in that moment when the ball bounced down to him from bouncing around the box. It comes out to him again, technically superb hit. I don't think he really could have done anything more with it. It's just good defending from Forest in the end, really. Nico Williams and Murillo both on the line. And that was the way that the game played out. Could Ruben Amorim have done any more? I think people are not really all that happy at his lack of substitutions. I think he used only two, and one of them was bringing Mazraoui on for Lenny Yoro, which he explained as he saw that Lenny Yoro was having the opportunity a lot from right centre back to carry the ball forward, and the reason why he made the change. We don't really get explanations of why he changes his centre backs all that much, but he said after this that he brought Mazraoui on because he's a fullback and he theoretically is a better ball carrier, given he's a fullback and tends to do that in fullback positions. Better ball carrier. And if Yoro was getting that much space to carry the ball from right centre back, maybe there would be some kind of advantage that United could take from having somebody who's more capable of carrying the ball, like Mazraoui, into those positions if that trend continued. But obviously, the big worries or the big concerns or the big complaints, I suppose. I don't think they're massive concerns or complaints, but bright questions, obviously, to ask why Amorim is not changing round players like Kobbie Mainoo. Again, penny for his thoughts, honestly. This is only going one way, really, isn't it? He's not getting minutes. He doesn't seem to be relied on. He's not relied on. And he wasn't brought on to change the game here. Joshua Zirkzee getting less minutes than Kobbie Mainoo is as well. And Mason Mount was obviously on the bench as well and wasn't used. So Amorim said, I don't think the answer is really to bring more attacking players on. And look, he got a hell of a lot of stick for bringing Mason Mount on at Brentford, right? I think he played him at left wing back or on the left side, and he got absolutely killed for that. Absolutely criticized to the hilt for that. But what do you really do in that situation? I mean, you can't really, with the upside that Cunha and Mbeumo are showing and the quality that they have, and Mbeumo's finishing and his coldness in front of goal and Cunha's ability to create something out of nothing, you don't really take those players off. Sesko was pretty much out of the game for most of it. Did have an opportunity at the end, which was deflected over, which United didn't get a corner for, and Forest went down the other end and had a corner when they shouldn't have. For me, I don't really know how he affects the game in that moment. I think for me, a lot of the time in that game, I was thinking about how he goes and changes this. The midfield seemed like a problem, quite porous. And I was wondering, what do United do in this situation? How do you change it? Because Mamadou Ugarte is not going to come on and really do anything, is he? And I do worry if United last week against Brighton, when Casemiro was brought off for Mainoo, looked like they had a hell of a lot of problems dealing with the defensive aspect in central midfield. So do you bring Kobbie Mainoo on for a Casemiro in that situation, knowing that happened last week and that Casemiro was the one who at the time had scored the goal? He's a big attacking presence aerially. He's a big defensive presence aerially as well. You can't really sacrifice that for me on the day. So what do you do there? Do you maybe bring on Kobbie Mainoo for Sesko and push Bruno further forward and put Cunha as the striker? Do you bring Mason Mount on for Benjamin Sesko as well? Do you bring Zirkzee on? There wasn't really an obvious substitution that I would have made either. So I kind of see where he's coming from. There's obviously the argument to say that you should be bringing those kinds of players on because they have quality and they can offer something different to the game. But I don't think Amorim is entirely convinced by any of them at the moment. United have spent big on an entirely new front three over the course of the summer for a reason. He said Cunha and Joshua Zirkzee are pretty similar players in the fact that they both like to occupy space between the lines. It's kind of like for like, but do you take Cunha off for Zirkzee? Do you take Sesko off? I think what I would have done if I was to make a change is probably would have taken Sesko off because he wasn't really being utilized. The crosses, as Amorim said, weren't really coming in, but he didn't really do all that much on the day, So I'm a bit on the fence with that one. I'm not entirely sure what he could have done because I wasn't convinced that any of the changes that he could have made would have made a difference. But on another day, maybe you could have. Maybe you could have. But look, it's overall, I think this was always going to be a slippery one the Tottenham away game next week will be a slippery one as well. And through the week, I'm going to talk about that game. I think Tottenham have won 3 games at home this year or something like that, which is absolutely crazy. And I'm conditioned to think that, whereas Man United, they'll go and give them a gimme. Tottenham won the Europa League final against United. It's the first meeting between the two since then. But Tottenham have been shocking this season. So I will judge United's progress, I think, quite well on how they react in that game. If there's a trend developing there where Tottenham are not very good at home, it's up to United to go and stifle them again like Chelsea did yesterday and go beat them. Like, they should be going into that. There's no... there shouldn't be any concerns really about going into that atmosphere and not reproducing the quality of performance that you have. If Tottenham are that toothless, what do you have to worry about? Go and score at the other end. Chelsea should have won that game by a hell of a lot more. I'll talk about that Tottenham game in the week to come, though. But obviously, it's 2 points dropped or maybe 1 point gained. Let me know what you think in the comments section or on social at @double_Scott Saunders. Is it 2 points dropped or 1 gained? How are you feeling about that now? There's certainly shortcomings in the team, but I look at it and I think nothing of what I saw yesterday really surprises me. I think the same issues that I know already there came back up again. And there are certain deals that United will need to do to progress the squad, which will stop those. It's just the way that it is to me. And for me, I think it's you take the point, you acknowledge your position in the league. 17 points after 10 games is pretty much in line with the likes of Chelsea and Spurs, who I think are on the same points as well. All have the same kind of ambitions. So let's see how United do over the course of the next stretch of matches, because we'll have a better gauge of how United are doing when they play these games against Tottenham or Palace or West Ham at home or Wolves. Those games are where United really need to pick up points. This was always going to be a slippery one for United. I would have liked to see them win, but they didn't. It wasn't to be. But anyway, let me know what you think, like I say, on social and in the comment sections. Subscribe to the podcast if you've not done so already as well. Apple, Spotify, and on YouTube as well. Please like the video or subscribe to the channel and follow on Spotify. Do all this kind of stuff. 5-star reviews and comments. Really, really appreciate it. See you next time, everyone. I'll be back probably on Monday or Tuesday for more talk about what's up with Manchester United. Until then, see you next time. Have a fantastic remainder of your weekend or start to your week. See you soon.